Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Kabuki Quantum Fighter. In the last part we started off the game, and now we're gonna go finish it off honestly, because the latter half of the game is pretty short. Something I haven't mentioned yet is that Kabuki Quantum Fighter is only 6 stages long, and the final stage is just a boss fight, so this game's not exactly meaty, even though the difficulty curve is noticeable. So at the end of the last part, we got the Quantum Bombs, and they are the most powerful weapon in the game by far. Even though I don't recommend using them until you're at a boss fight, because they take up a lot of chip very quickly. The Quantum Bombs are just straight up sticks of dynamite. They do heavy damage, and they cause a lingering explosion effect that can do multiple hits on enemies, and because of that, if you hit them on a weak spot of a boss fight, they're gonna go down pretty quickly. But again, make sure to save the chip. Also, that one up there is always there, because, well, like I mentioned last time, enemy drops are completely set. Now, something that I do find interesting, apparently, behind the scenes, there is coding for a 6th weapon that we never end up getting in the game. That would have been an orb that you sent straight in the air that would have rained down projectiles on enemies. Probably would have taken, from memory, like a whopping 16 chip points, so like half a bar. So it probably wasn't even cut out just because of how little there was left of the game. It's probably cut out because it'd be way too expensive for any kind of reliable use. Now, notably, there's also a level select code in the game, though it's a bit tricky to input because you need both controllers plugged in. At the title screen on the Player 2 controller, you need to input A 8 times, B 4 times, and right 16 times. And when you're on the round start text at the start of a stage, you can press up or down on the first player controller to select the level in question. I think it goes by screens? You can select a lot of things, but I think a lot of the options just end up crashing the game because there's no level data loaded there. And if you use the level select code, you also accidentally activate a debug mode. When you're in the main game, pressing up down on controller 2 can alter your chip levels, and pressing A on it can just skip a level entirely. But now we're on to the boss of stage 4. This green thing, but the green thing notably has bits right out of Gundam, and they're constantly firing at you. This is where the dynamite really comes in handy because it makes it very easy to take out the bits, leaving only the main boss in our way. The boss itself likes to hop between the top and bottom of the screen, and while it leaves it open for the dynamite when you eventually run out of chip and you don't want to just take away your life points, you need to bait it down by having it fire its laser twice, but as you can see, the timing for that's a little tricky. After it fires twice, it flies all over the screen invincible, sort of just being a little bit of a bullet hell in itself, and then you're just open to attacking it straight up. At this point, I would just recommend taking the Pyrrhic approach and just beating the shit out of it with your hair. Stage 4 is not a lot to write home about. But I do like the art design here. I like how the game gets visually more organic looking the further in we get. We have pinpointed the enemy's invasion route. It's coming up on the monitor. Wait, look at the monitor. It's the Hyperion research satellite. But I thought it had been lost years ago. Are you sure it's the Hyperion? Of course I'm sure, but it looks like it's being controlled by the computer. Our own satellite used in battle against us. But I thought all of our space probes were built with a self-destruct device. Can't we just blow it up? It's not that simple. The program to run it is stored in Area 5. There's no way to get at it. We can't get at it. Colonel, did you hear that? Can you get in and knock out the defense system? In Area 5? Roger, on my way. And our final notable upgrade is we get the remote control bolo. This is a weird item. It's just not very useful. What happens when you use it, you spawn essentially like Super Tails' Flicky army from Sonic 3 Knuckles, where you just got these 3 fireflies roaming around you, and they'll actively chase and attack enemies if there's any on screen. It would theoretically be useful if it didn't cost a decent amount of chip, and if there was more than just one platforming level left in the game. Because this is the final level, and they want you to use every jump you've learned by now real hard. Be it adjusting your jump heights from a hanging status, the way momentum works on conveyor belts or ice platforms. They want you to have memorized it and take good effect of it here. It's also a notably decently long level. Mind you, not that any of the levels in this game are like super long, but for this game, it's decently long. Also, something I didn't notice for some time with this game is that there's not really any instant kill hazards in it. There's no bottomless pits, there's no real way to crush yourself to death. It's just damage hazards. And there's something about that I weirdly appreciate, even though it definitely stands out as being a little weird if you're used to them. Also, this part of the area has a lot of patrolling weird little satellite things, which I guess makes sense given we're in a satellite, but a little weird. They move decently fast, but honestly I would just recommend taking a Pyrrhic approach and just damage boosting through them. Enemies drop enough health during the latter half of the level anyway that it's kind of just worth ignoring them. Unless you're doing some sort of no damage run, which I'm sure there's someone out there who's done. In fact, you know what? Let me check YouTube real quick. Kabuki Quantum Fighter no damage. There's no damage run for all the bosses, and no death runs of the main game, but I'm not seeing any no damage runs. I'm imagining they probably use some amount of damage boosting in the speed run too, because I remember from that showing up at a Games Done Quick some amount of years ago that it's like a sub 10-minute run, I think, at this point nowadays. Which, yeah, that about tracks for the length of the game. Either way, welcome to the last platforming screen in the game. It is a very long vertical climb, so make sure you use your jumps right, because otherwise you're going to be falling, and that's a lot to redo. Plus, enemies do respawn at a decent rate of this game to get off-screen enough like Mega Man, so you need to be a bit careful. This is also one of the only levels you really get to use the kick you have when you're hanging onto platforms. My best advice for here, if you're trying to take care of enemies, especially ones like these hangers that are below you and above you in some cases, use the fusion shot, the spread shot we got in like stage 2 or 3, as it will usually reach them and take them out in one hit, no problem. The biggest problem there is that you're not going to be able to collect whatever they drop, but I feel like it's basically impossible to do that no matter what anyway with a lot of enemies on this screen. The weird little lizard dudes and the hanging guys on the horizontal climbing walls are probably going to be what you grab most of the items from. Going off on a tangent though, Happy New Year. This is the first video being recorded in 2023. It's currently still the 1st, actually, of January. And if I'm going to guess from when this is going to get uploaded based off how much of Soul Silver's left on top of the other smaller LPs I've done since, this is probably being uploaded in like mid-March at the latest. So a little behind the times, but just hope you guys have been doing well. Hope you guys are... If you had any resolutions, I hope they're going well. If you don't, hey, me too, don't worry. Hope your holiday seasons went well. Just hope things are going good for all of you. Ooh, here we are. This is easily the worst part of the level to me, because we got a lot of conveyor belt platforms that have the weird, awkward jump physics off of, and we're gonna have a lot of small platforms with these we need to make some really precise jumps with, all things considered. This is the easiest part of the game to fall off in. Thankfully, based on the level design below you, thanks to that little section we just climbed through, there's at least like a bucket of sorts to catch you if you fall, unless you fall on the very far left side of the screen, but that's very unlikely here. But this sequence of jumps, especially with these two ice platforms, is just real rough. I don't like it. And they technically pull a second instance of that right here, where you got that giant void of level design to the right, and if you won't get to the top of this section, that enemy right there and its little partner up there could easily knock you down there if you make a weirdly timed jump, so be careful. I've fallen down there more times than I like to admit, and even this section's really easy to just kind of fall off on. This game controls well, except for the conveyor belts and ice physics, in which case it doesn't, and sometimes the jumps they want you to make, even with your tight control, are a little specific. And that enemy type right there, the weird-looking little mantis guys, are probably the most annoying enemies in the game, only because they're the only ones that have a really consistent projectile firing rate that's not like a standard stagnant enemy position. These things move, and they will throw their claws at you if you get too close. You're meant to just sort of jump over them and attack them from behind, but with Scott's main weapon being close range, I find that really uncomfortable to use. Because during a lot of the main levels, I don't really like to use my chip. I like to save it for the boss fights, especially here in the late game where the dynamite costs so much. Early on when it's just maybe the first 2 shot types, I'll use it maybe occasionally, but here I really like to stick with just what I got. But here we are at the top of the tower. We are done with platforming. It's only cutscenes and boss fight from here on. But before we go on to the final boss, it's time for the Stage 5 boss, which, if memory serves, in the Japanese version of the game, is a completely different color. I want to say it's all red instead of blue. This fight's a little weird in that it tries to patrol a little bit left to right on the screen, but you're meant to jump up and get up here to this crystal. The eyes on either side can fire at you, but when you're on top, it tries to boost you off with a giant shockwave attack. But if you notice its animation, when it first spawns in, it's a 1-tile wide attack. You can actually use that to your advantage and jump over the attack before it spawns its full height. So you can just jump over the enemy's attacks if you're punching it right in its gem, and because of that, it doesn't really get to do much. It's a boss fight that looks like it should be threatening, but it's really not. We have failed. The enemy has deactivated the Hyperion self-destruct program. Is there anything we can do on this end? Nothing. Well, maybe there is something we can do. If we can get the Colonel into Hyperion's main computer, he might be able to reactivate it directly. It's our only chance. This is Scott. I heard what you said. Get me there now. Is that okay, Colonel? The transmission program is running now. And we're now approaching the final battle. And they don't give us a power-up. This is where we would have probably gotten that final power-up if it was actually in the game. And the final boss is this weird alien thing, which I think is actually meant to be an alien in the game story. I'm not sure what it is over in the Japanese version. So this boss fight looks threatening a little bit, despite its little doofy smile, but it's honestly really easy. Phase 1, it throws out fireballs that go towards the floor and get larger as they go, but if you just stand under the head while it fires, you'll never get hit by it. I recommend using your hair for this particular phase of the fight, as if you use the dynamite here, you might not have enough for Phase 2, because Phase 2 is definitely the more chaotic phase, so you might want that to end more quickly. Plus, since this fight only has this one attack anyway at the moment, it's not like it's a real threat in terms of range. So staying a little close range, maybe taking some accidental pot shots, not too bad an idea. They give you plenty of time for this boss fight too. Again, that one scream last time is such a weird anomaly in the game when it comes to the timer, and I don't get why. They do have those platforms up there you can hang on to, I guess if you are wanting to use some of the long-range options, like the fusion shot or either of Scott's main projectiles. But the hair really is the best option for Phase 1, whereas Phase 2, the dynamite's going to be brought out. Phase 2, your target's just about the same, it's just that now at the end of that weird fleshy neck, there's going to be a gun that fires out little projectiles at a time in its own little fusion shot. It can either go straight across and with the 3 diagonals, or straight across with a downward diagonal. It does try to aim for you, but as long as you're spamming dynamite, as you can see, it doesn't really get a chance to do much of anything, and why not? Let's equalize our health and ship out one last time, even though it's not going to do much. There's the thing we unlocked at the end of the last stage, by the way. Or at the start of the part, rather. And that's game. Let's see what happens with the Hyperion. Oh, and they count on your extra lives for score, too. I always forget about that. A message from Hyperion. Mission accomplished. The self-destruct program has been reconnected. Were you able to recover the Colonel? Not yet. Of course, if he was still inside that program when Hyperion blew up. This is Scott. Control room, can you hear me? Colonel, we had given you up for dead. I'd like to return to my body now. Can you pick me up at the access point? Roger. The Hyperion research satellite has been reduced to space dust. According to the investigation that followed, while the kernel was inside the satellite, the virus that had invaded the computer had grown and mutated at an extraordinary rate. The virus had taken the information from the computer banks and used it to spread terror across the universe. Their stated goal of conquering the known universe was almost realized. But the human spirit and need for freedom are strong. Thanks to the efforts of valiant men like the Colonel, the spirit of peace lives on for all the peoples of planet Earth. But we must ever be vigilant. Who knows when this kind of terrorism might rise again. Weird speech to end the game on, but okay. That's Kabuki Quantum Fighter. It's short, but it's a solid Ninja Gaiden-like. Would I rather play like a Ninja Gaiden 2? Yeah. But I'd still say it's worth a shot if you like these types of games. It's relatively easy compared to a lot of the other types of the game of the genre, at least, on the NES at the least. I'd say there's probably easier games in this general idea nowadays, like The Messenger, for instance. But it's short, and it's sweet. It does its job well. I do believe there is a fan translation out there for the Japanese version if you want to see the different cutscenes that the game has, too. I know, for instance, the thing causing the weirdness across the world in that game is a giant golden Magatama that's in space turning the city to gold. Weird, but it's funny, at least. And the one final thing of note is that when you beat the game and the end screen pops up, you can press the B button to see one last message in the game, a cute little animation of Scott bowing, and it also gives you access to a sound test if you want to listen to the game's ultimately not too memorable soundtrack, but there's two really fun songs in here between the credits theme and one of the stage themes. You can do that. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, have a great night, take care, and I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. If memory serves, it's also an NES game, and one that's a lot greener. See you guys then. Here's the little animation, by the way. I love that sprite. I want to say it's slightly changed from the Japanese release, but I cannot quite remember. Also, there never was a Next Adventure. This game never got any kind of sequel in any regard. Not too surprising given it's a movie tie-in game in Japan overall, but I think a game with this mechanics, with these exact mechanics, could have been nice to have a sequel to, even if it was on like the Super Nintendo. Either way, yeah, see you guys next time.